For the families and friends of missing people or true crime victims, the unsolved mysteries of what happened to their loved ones can be real-life horror stories. Getting answers to these real mysteries won't undo the pain that they have caused, but it can bring some solace to families. Number 5. The true crime story of the disappearance of Audrey Moat is one of the scariest unexplained mysteries. Taking place in Louisiana in 1956, what happened to Audrey and who took the life of her lover, Thomas Hoddard, remains an unanswered question. Audrey was 31 years old in 1956 and a divorced mother of 3. Thomas was still a married man, but the couple had been in a secret relationship for more than a year before the incident on November 24. Unknown to even Audrey's family, he was the father of her 3rd child, a little girl named Jacqueline. Audrey had told her family she had adopted Jacqueline while seeking treatment for a mental breakdown about a year before her disappearance. But the truth would be uncovered as investigators looked into her disappearance. She was last seen on the morning of November 24th. Hunters had come across Hoddard's car, parked near the shore, and noticed the couple inside. Naturally, they left the pair alone, but when they came back the same afternoon, they noticed the car was still there. This time, the front passenger door was open. The next day, one of the hunters came back and found the car still parked there. The passenger door was still open. He found Thomas's body inside, lying on the front seats that had been folded back to form a bed. He'd been struck by a bullet that had been fired through the rear window. Audrey, who the hunter had seen the day before, was nowhere to be found. The search for Audrey began, and this was when investigators made the shocking discovery of Audrey's secret. Bills for Jacqueline's delivery were discovered in the car, and it was found Audrey had checked into the hospital as Audrey Hoddard. Also discovered at the scene of the crime were footprints that seemed to belong to a barefooted woman who was running. Alongside these were larger footprints, which led into the woods and ended at the road. On the road, search teams found a single tire track. Investigators found the contents of a woman's purse, Audrey's glasses, and a car key which was later found to fit Audrey's vehicle. 2 weeks after Audrey disappeared, her ex-mother-in-law, Norma, received a call from a woman she identified as Audrey. Audrey addressed Norma as Mom and said she was in bad trouble and needed help. When Norma asked where she was, Audrey just hung up. Police traced the call to New Orleans, and Audrey's family believed that she had phoned Norma because she didn't have money to make a long-distance call to her own mother, who lived in Baton Rouge. Searching the area of New Orleans that the call had been made from, investigators found 2 cafe waitresses who claimed that Audrey had been in the day before the phone call and ordered coffee and donuts. She looked disheveled, and when one of the waitresses pointed out a newspaper photograph to the other, Audrey left. A housewife who had a room to rent recognized Audrey as a woman who had inquired about the room and asked to use the phone. She had stayed for dinner, but apparently left after this. At first, Audrey's family believed she may have escaped, but believed police thought she was responsible for Thomas's passing. Police tried to make it clear that they thought Audrey was innocent, given that she didn't have a motive and the evidence at the crime scene didn't indicate that she was responsible. Over the years, there have been a number of tips in this strange true crime mystery, but none have ever led to answers for Thomas or Audrey's families. Number 4. When it comes to unsolved mysteries and strange true crimes, few have as many conspiracy theories surrounding them as the passing of Italian banker Roberto Calvi. Calvi's body was discovered hanging under the Blackfriars Bridge in London on June 18, 1982. He had more than $10,000 in 3 different currencies on his person and bricks in his pockets. Initially, it was ruled that Calvi had taken his own life, but later investigations found this true crime story had a much more sinister cause. Calvi had been the chairman at the Banco Ambrosiano, which for decades had close ties to the Vatican. The Vatican was the bank's largest shareholder, and Calvi had earned the nickname God's Banker. But he was also a banker for more sinister figures. with both the Mafia and a Masonic society as customers. By 1982, the bank was surrounded in scandals. Calvi had been found guilty of illegally transferring billions of lire overseas, which earned him a suspended sentence. Remarkably, he'd been able to keep his job as chairman of the bank, but he knew things were only going to get worse. Just weeks before he passed, he wrote a letter to the Pope. He told the Pope that a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions was coming, and warned the church would be damaged because of it. Then he vanished from his home in Italy. He traveled with a fake passport to Zurich, then to London, where he settled in an apartment in the Chelsea district. It was only at this point that he was removed from his position at the bank. On the evening of June 18th, Calvi went out for a meal, took a stroll along the bank of the River Thames. Then an unknown horror occurred. The investigation into Calvi's passing found it extremely unlikely that the 62-year-old man would have been able to climb onto the bridge scaffolding with bricks in his pockets without anybody seeing him. It was also discovered he had no brick residue on his hands and no traces of rust or paint from the scaffolding on his shoes. An autopsy also couldn't confirm the actual cause of his passing. It was eventually ruled that Calvi hadn't passed due to his own hand, but who was responsible was the new unsolved mystery. It was theorized that the Mafia and the Masonic organization may have worked together to take care of Calvi. A former Mafia member who was accused of the crime claimed that he had been approached about it, but by the time he responded, his boss had told him Calvi had already been taken care of. Some have also pointed out that the Masonic group referred to themselves as Frati Neri, which translates to Black Friars. Of course, that could just be a strange yet disturbing coincidence. The Vatican itself has also been accused. In 2005, 5 people were put on trial, including former Mafia members and Calvi's bodyguard. However, the case against them was dismissed due to a lack of evidence. Number 3. What happened to Patricia Eve Gogler has stumped investigators for more than 40 years. In 2022, there's been a new push for information to try to solve this strange unsolved mystery. Not a lot is known about Patricia or her strange passing. At the time of the crime, she was 28 years old from Pottstown, Pennsylvania, but in the early fall of 1980, she had decided to make some changes in her life. In recent news stories, sources claim Patricia was moving from Pottstown to Richmond, Virginia, where her family lived. She may have been moving in with her brother, Earl Gogler, but Patricia wouldn't make it that far. She was last seen at the Ashland-Sunoco gas station near the I-95 at about 3 p.m. on September 19, 1980. That should have been a simple journey down the I-95 to get into Richmond. A short time later, firefighters were called to a small brush fire near what was then Greenwood Church Road. The area was near the intersection of Virginia 657 and 666. They found Patricia's car on a gravel path, and in the fire, found Patricia herself. The location was well off the route Patricia would have taken, and investigators couldn't find any reason why Patricia would have been in that location. There was no sign of any wounds other than those caused by the fire. Few other details have been made public. Patricia was identified via her dental records. How she came to be at that location, whether there was anybody she knew who would want to hurt her, or if someone followed her from the gas station, were all unanswered questions that investigators hope this latest push for information could solve. Anyone who has information is asked to contact the Hanover County Sheriff's Office. Number 2. Lola Catherine Fry disappeared under extremely suspicious circumstances in November of 1993. Since then, her family has been living a true horror story as they try to get answers about what happened to her. At the time, 28-year-old Lola was looking for a fresh start. She had plans to move to Fort Wayne, Indiana to live with a sister, and was looking at going back to school. Lola had previously worked as an exotic dancer at a club, where the owner had paid for her, and about 40 other dancers to get cosmetic surgery. She had left the club, and in 1991, Lola and 2 other former dancers had begun a class action lawsuit against her former employer. By November of 1993, They had won the case, but Lola still needed to attend her deposition. That was scheduled for November 14th, but she would never make it. The evening before, Lola had gone to a party at an apartment belonging to her hairdresser in Greenwood, Indiana. Alcohol and illegal substances were present, and at one point Lola passed out. Rather than checking on her, her ex-boyfriend John Riker and another partygoer placed her in Riker's car and he took her to his home. Even though they had separated, Riker and Lola were still good friends, so it wasn't too sinister. The next morning, Riker left Lola sleeping to go to his business. He just intended to let workers in and return home and was only gone an hour. When he returned at 8 a.m., Lola was gone. Her red and black Mitsubishi Eclipse was also missing. Lola was reported missing by her sister 4 days later. Since then, no trace of Lola or her car have turned up. Law enforcement questioned Riker to get to the bottom of this unsolved mystery. He couldn't pass a polygraph test, though this doesn't necessarily prove he was lying. A search of his home and business turned up no evidence. Police do have a suspect, someone they haven't named, but don't believe that they have the evidence needed to solve this mystery once and for all. It's unknown whether Lola's legal action had anything to do with her disappearance, but the two other dancers dropped the case after she vanished. Anyone with information on the case is asked to contact the Indiana State Police. Number 1. Marshall Iwasa hasn't been seen or heard from since November 2019. Since then, his family have battled to have his case reclassified as a criminal investigation so that they can get to the bottom of this scary unsolved mystery. More than 2.5 years later, there are still no answers. Marshall was 26 years old when he vanished. He had previously been studying at Southern Alberta Institute of Technology on a software development program. Unknown to his family, he had dropped out before the start of the fall semester and was apparently dealing with a lot of stress due to the situation. It wasn't something that appeared to be hindering his day-to-day life, though. November 17th, 2019 was the last time that he was seen by family or friends. He spent the day doing housework at home in Calgary, then made the 2-hour trip to Lethbridge to visit his mother to help her with computer problems. At 11 p.m., he told his mother he was going to get something from a storage unit that he shared with his sister, then head back home to Calgary. It was 30 minutes later that he arrived at the storage unit. It contained items belonging to his sister who lived in Hawaii and himself. It was mostly camping equipment, extra household items, and things like Christmas ornaments. Marshall couldn't get access to the unit overnight, though he tried the code multiple times. Finally, at just after 6 a.m. on November 18th, he got access to the unit, and he stayed there for 2.5 hours, then left. This was the last confirmed sighting of Marshall. His family didn't realize that anything was wrong. They wouldn't know that he had disappeared until November 26th. British Columbia RCMP phoned his mother to ask if she knew where Marshall was. His truck had been found on a remote forest road in Pemberton. The truck had been found 2 days earlier by a group of hikers. It had been burned out, and one of the hikers claimed it smelled as if the crime had taken place recently. Items including game consoles, multiple phones, and items of clothing were scattered around on the floor. The location was so remote that they couldn't get phone service, so it wasn't reported to police until the following day. It then took police another day to reach the location due to how dangerous the road was. None of Marshall's family were able to get a hold of him and couldn't explain what his truck was doing there. It was an area that he had never visited before, and given how hard it was to reach, it seemed unlikely he had gotten there alone. It was also discovered that many of the items, including the game consoles, didn't belong to Marshall. Multiple searches of the area around the truck turned up no clues as to what happened to him, and his family are certain that he isn't on the mountain. Given the time between when Marshall was last seen and when it was discovered that he was missing, many important clues such as CCTV footage are no longer available. Financial records were, though. The journey from the storage unit to where the truck was found would have taken between 12 and 16 hours, and required multiple fuel stops on the way. However, no charges have been made on Marshall's card since before he was last seen. There were also no reported sightings of him by gas station attendants, leading the family to suggest that someone else drove Marshall's truck into the wilderness. This true crime story is one with many unanswered questions. Not only is Marshall missing, but so are a number of his items, including his phone and a laptop. Nothing was taken from the storage unit, so why Marshall spent hours trying to get in is also a mystery. His family continues to push for answers, and they urge anyone with information to contact Crime Stoppers. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.